Yes, and it is indeed a much awaited matter of joy for me. Today, we will be talking to Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Chitra is the author of the best-selling novels Queen of Dreams, The Mistress of Spices, Sister of My Heart, and The Wine of Desire. She has also written prize-winning story collections Arranged Marriage and The Unknown Errors of Our Lives. She lives in Houston, Texas, and teaches creative writing at the University of Houston. Today, she is in New York to talk about her new novel, The Palace of Illusions. In this novel, the story of epic Mahabharata is retold from the point of view of Draupadi. Chitra has also woven the possible questions of doubt that would emerge in a modern mind. Baltimore Sun commented for Chitra's Queen of Dreams that it is a masala of page-turning addiction. For The Palace of Illusions, I would say for readers, along with the capacity to turn pages, it has the capacity to turn their hearts and mind too. Welcome Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni to ITV studio. Let me begin with your name, Chitra. You have Banerjee and Divakaruni both. You could have worked with one of them. What was it that kept both with you?
Well, Banerjee is of course my maiden name, and since many of my books are set with Bengali characters or in Bengal, in Calcutta, the city where I was born, so I wanted to keep my Bengali heritage very much in my writing, and Divakaruni is my husband's name.
And moving forward, writing is one thing, then seeing your work in the form of film is a different experience, I believe. Mistress of Spices, a novel, was made into movie, and the actress was Aishwarya Rai, quite a big deal. How was it for you to see what you had written and the way they showed in the movie? Were you happy, satisfied?
Yes, it was very exciting for me to have Mistress of Spices made into a film, especially because I really liked the work of the directors, Gurinder Chadha, who made Bend It Like Beckham, and her husband, Paul Burgess. I think they did a very good job. They did focus more on the romantic angle of the book. The book is largely about our community in the United States, the South Asian community, and how it faces many challenges and many changes. The romantic story is a small part of the book, or a smaller part of the book, but of course with Aishwarya being in the lead, it became a very big deal in the movie.
But overall, it was a good experience.
Yes,
for
and
you.
many people have said that they have really enjoyed it. And I think it's always wonderful when a book is made into a movie, because it attracts a whole new audience to the book after that.
And we have heard Sage Vedvyasa claimed all that is possible in the world to happen has found a place in the epic Mahabharata. What gave you the confidence and conviction that you would be able to tell this story of such a vast magnitude, or it's almost impossible to conceive that in this period somebody making an attempt to retell this?
Well, it was a scary idea actually, because I've been thinking of this for a number of years, and it is the Mahabharata is such a wonderful text. It is so complex, it's so deep, that I was a little nervous about taking on the idea. But then some years back, Swami Tejomayananda, who is the head of Chinmay Mission, he said, well, why don't you make an effort to write a book that brings out our Indian spiritual values? And then that gave me the courage to start this project. And I think I focused on it and selected and simplified the story so that I'm not telling the story of the entire Mahabharata. I'm really telling Draupadi's story, Draupadi, who is called Panchali in this novel. The Palace of Illusions begins with her life, and it will end with her passing away on the Himalaya mountains.
So that's a wonderful idea which was inspired by Swami Tejomayananda, as you said. And you have shown all the events from the point of view of Draupadi. Along with events, you take the reader to the inner working of Draupadi's mind also. I would say you have accomplished the amazing task of balance. Your book would be cherished and enjoyed by people who respect scriptures and Indian culture, and at the same time, The Palace of Illusions also has insight resonating with the doubts and the questions that modern mind may have. Were you conscious of creating this balance while working on the book, or it just happened?
No, I really tried to create a balance. I wanted to be as authentic as possible. I did a lot of research going back to the Mahabharata, and as you, I'm sure, know, there are many versions of the Mahabharata in different vernacular languages, so I went and looked at several of them. I also did some research on novels which have been written about the Mahabharata, again in our Indian vernacular languages, and critical articles on the Mahabharata. So I wanted to create a text that was at once authentic but accessible to people of this time, both people who are familiar with this story and maybe our children who are perhaps not as familiar with the story. I wanted to pull them into the story because it is a great story. It's full of, you could call it a thriller, right? Just because of everything that happens, but it's a thriller with great psychological depth. And I wanted to bring out that aspect, the timeless aspect of the Mahabharata, how it was relevant in that time, but it's still very relevant in the questions it asks and the values it gives us even today.
And talking about the relevance of Mahabharata, you referred to the books that are already there in Indian languages, like I am reminded of Shivaji Sawant's Mrityunjay, which is Karna's story.
Right.
And this is Draupadi, so the hero is already depicted by Shivaji Sawant. It was also translated into Hindi, I believe, maybe some more languages.
And English also. I read that in English translation.
And there has been few more works of this nature, like Ram Kumar Brahmer has written novels based on Brahmayan's characters. Then Narendra Kohli has also worked in the same way. But in English, and also I want to remember Amrit Lal Nagar in Hindi, who has written biographies of Surdas and Tulsidas, and they're beautiful. And, and these are like meditative experience for the reader also, in addition to when the writer must have written it. But I think in English, in whatever limited knowledge I have, this is a groundbreaking work. I think nobody has attempted to put this story in this form. Now, it's a gripping mixture of knowledge as well as interesting stories. Allow me to share these lines from page 149 of the book before next question. Lord Krishna is telling Draupadi, don't be so attached to what is. After all, no more than stone and metal and Asura's sleight of hand. All things in this world change and pass away. Some after many years, some overnight. Appreciate the palace of illusions by all means, but if you identify so deeply with it, you set yourself up for sorrow. Wonderful. Tell us, Chitra, how do did you zeroed on the title Palace of Illusions for this book?
Well, the Palace of Illusions on a literal level stands for the palace that was built for the Pandavas when they went into the wilderness, and Maya Danav built the palace, and it is a magical palace where things are not what they seem. So I wanted, and that becomes an important part of the Mahabharata. That will be where Duryodhana is humiliated by falling into the water, and that will be where he perhaps starts formulating his plan of revenge. So it's an important part of the story. But also I was very fascinated by the Palace of Illusions, and I chose it as the title because in our scriptures there is a sense that this entire world is a palace of illusions. It is not what it seems. And just like the passage that you read, just like that palace, if we set too much importance on the things of the world which pass away, again we do set ourselves up for sorrow. So I wanted to draw that parallel.
And since you are telling the story from the point of view of Draupadi, so you have taken creative liberties at few places. And one, I would say, there is a scene where before her marriage, Draupadi is taken to Sage Vyasa, and he predicts what is going to happen in her life. But more important, you also have Sage Vyasa blessing along with Sanjay to Draupadi for the vision of what is going to happen in the battle. How was it to conceive of this idea, and why did you chose this to happen this way?
Well, especially with that second scene, that I felt that just as Sanjay was given a vision so that Dhritarashtra on the Kaurava side could see the battle, then someone on the Pandava side should also be given that ability to see everything that happens on the battlefield. And so I created that scene where Draupadi then gets the gift, where she can see everything that's going on, and also she can understand what's going on in the minds of the warriors. As a writer, it was a technique that I wanted to use because I wanted to get Draupadi's reaction on what was happening in the war, just as it was happening, not something she hears from someone, but she experiences it firsthand. And in fact, those are two big scenes where I have taken creative liberties. But in a way in which this book is different from the Mahabharata is that throughout this book, the focus is on Draupadi's inner workings, her psychology. What is she thinking? How does she react when we have the great dramatic scene when her clothes are, the Kauravas say, we will remove your clothes, and they're trying to do it. What is really going on in her head? And those were the moments that I wanted to explore in this novel, to make her a central character.
I think that makes it more interesting for readers also, and not only the events, but the experience, the emotional flow, the inner working of the mind of Draupadi makes this story something that you breathe yourself while you are reading, and that's amazing. There are many words of wisdom hidden in this book. Turning to page 40 of the book, sage Vyasa warns Panchali to be careful about her pride, temper, and vengefulness. She says, I'm not like that. To which Vyasa responds by saying, even the wisest don't know what is hidden in the depth of their being. Reflecting upon her meeting with Vyasa, Draupadi raises a question which is on page 43. Did this mean that I had no control over what was to happen? To which she herself replies, surely it wasn't so. Otherwise, why did he take the trouble to warn me? I'm just sharing your work with you to ask the question, what do you think? Is it possible for the human beings to change their destiny with respect to this story?
Well, of course, there's two things here, what I really believe and what the Mahabharata shows us, and maybe we'll just stick with what the Mahabharata is showing us, which is showing that many things are decided ahead, and that goes along with our philosophy of karma. Some things are already decided for us, but by the same token, what we are doing right now is going to then manifest as karma in some later sphere. So I think what we are doing right now is very important, and there will be a place in the Palace of Illusions where Vyasa will and Krishna will also reinforce this idea that maybe we cannot change what's going to happen, but the attitude with which we live our lives right now will make a great difference in how what happens affects other people and affects us. So especially after Draupadi's great humiliation in the Kaurava court, she develops a very vengeful attitude, and she becomes one of the major reasons for the war. And Krishna tells her that, okay, maybe the war is going to happen anyway, but your attitude is going to have an effect on your inner being, and that is the part that is in your control. The outer events are not always in our control, but our inner attitude, which affects ultimately the destiny of our spiritual life, is always in our control.